Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Oh boy, welcome to what's bound to be a big news day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is the first day of March, and we are about 1 hour away from the news conference that all of the reporters in town have been eagerly awaiting since noon yesterday. And that is the mayoral news conference, in which we're expected to hear either that the mayor is not going to run for re-election or that he, in fact, might resign immediately. Now, it could be neither of those is going to be the case. Maybe he bought a new snowplow. Who knows? We'll know in an hour. Chris Potter was part of the scrum down outside the mayor's office for a little bit, but I think, like most, wearied of it and left. He's now recuperating at his home, I believe. Chris, are you there?
I am, yes.
Yes. So listening to the tweets all day and even into the evening from the reporters who I think felt like they were being held hostage. It was interesting. I mean, it was like, some pretty funny stuff. It's like people start losing their minds after a while, right? You get silly.
Yeah, it was a little, it got to be like kind of like the Occupy Pittsburgh thing, in that it was a group of very sincere people sitting around for a purpose that was really sort of hard to define. So, yeah, I mean, the whole thing yesterday was just, kind of really bizarre, and I don't know how much of the blame for that really actually even rests with Ravenstah.
Okay, well, so where did who put out, where did it come from that he was going to hold a press conference? The mayor's office never said that, did they?
That's correct. I mean, nobody, put it this way, there was never any formal statement from the mayor's office there was going to be a press conference at all. I could speak for myself. I certainly heard rumors that there would be one starting probably around 9 o'clock in the morning yesterday, 9:30, somewhere in there. And, I even heard the rumor of the 1 p.m. start time for this thing. Mm-hmm. But there's never any official confirmation from the mayor's office or from his campaign about that. And I say that as somebody who who talked to those guys. And I get the real surprise here, especially I think KDKA was especially very assertive and aggressive about reporting that this thing was going to happen, and, our Andy Sheehan has learned there will be a press conference, and it was just, generally speaking, the concept of a press conference that only certain reporters, that it's only leaked to certain reporters is sort of a bizarre concept if you sort of step back and think about it a little bit. But nobody did. Everybody went over there, and there's a point where you kind of have to be there even if nothing's happening, because you don't kind of want to miss it if it does. Right,
exactly. So, okay, so all of you are camped outside the mayor's office, which is locked, or nobody can get in.
Yeah. That's right.
The comings and goings of anybody create a huge stir, so you would get...
you would see these tweets,
tweets like...
Safety Director Michael Huss walked to the elevator, didn't say anything.
Door closed, right. Door closed. So it seems sort of silly. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, wait a minute. So while you guys are all sort of held hostage out there in the hall, the mayor was in his office and couldn't leave, correct?
No,
Or
not
is
at
there a
all.
back
I mean,
door?
there's always been.
back door.
There are other exits from the mayor's office.
There is.
If only as a matter of fire safety. I think.
Yeah.
So it would be. It's a fairly easy thing for him to get in and get out without
Encountering you.
without people in the lobby necessarily spotting him.
Okay. So it's not known even when he finally exited the building, and you guys are still sitting out there waiting for somebody to say something.
Yeah, and I think there was a reporter from PXI who was there for like 12 hours. Like all the other lights in the building were out, and you'd have to talk to PXI about their decision to to make that poor woman sit there. I hope she was earning overtime as so many members of our police department. Certainly hope that.
So the other thing that struck me as interesting yesterday is with all of this chitter-chatter and all you guys out there, and the mayor's office was mum. I mean, it did not discount any rumor.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means as much as anything. They didn't say a word.
Yeah, they neither confirmed nor denied, which I think that's sort of what makes the whole thing so surreal. And it really does kind of speak, I think, to a really dysfunctional relationship between the mayor's office and the press as a whole. There was some talk and some recollection yesterday, which maybe I'm sure you remember, maybe some of your listeners do too. A few years ago, after Snowmageddon happened, there were all these questions about, well, where is the mayor? Where is the mayor? And nobody could sort of lay a hand on the guy for a period of a couple days. And then he held this, exceedingly bizarre press conference where he said, I've basically been around, but I just kept a low profile to teach you all a lesson because you're so irresponsible that you just sort of report these rumors and raise all of these questions, da 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 da, and this is, aren't you ashamed of yourselves, kind of thing, and there was some speculation, understandably, yesterday that maybe something similar was going on here.
Well, so the scuttlebutt this morning, however, is back to something more substantial happening.
Yeah, and I never believed. Here's what I heard. I mean. And again, I heard this at about 9:30 yesterday morning, and what I heard was he is going to decide not to run for re-election, and that announcement will come sometime by the end of this week. Other people said by the end of the day yesterday, but I mean that was the first thing I heard.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, I mean when you kind of like pare back all of this other craziness about whether it was 1 p.m. or not, or maybe he'll step down entirely as a mayor and just resign the position outright. I mean, that's been the pretty consistent motif here, and that is what I expect to happen inside of an hour, is that the mayor will announce an intention to serve out his term, but that he will not be seeking re-election. That's what I expect. I don't think anybody should go out and make large bets in Vegas on the basis of that, because we've seen there's plenty of room for surprise, but that is really what I've been hearing, and apparently what other reporters have been hearing.
Now, all of this seemingly stemmed from a story that was in the Post-Gazette yesterday, which Tom Sokolowski was here, and I said, I am so confused. To me, the biggest story in the paper is sort of buried. It wasn't even a front-page story, and it was the story about the mayor again.
Yeah, but here's the thing about that. I mean, I also, a night or two before, I was at a ward.
I know.
The event that this happened on that kicked us off was a meeting of the North Side ward chairs. It's essentially the Democratic committee. And they have these, for people who don't know, the committee has these meetings all across the city. There's one almost every other night during this time of year. And the point of these meetings is that the candidates in various offices come and they speak to Democratic committee people, and they try to say, and what they try to do is they try to make the case for why the party should endorse them.
Right.
So then the party has a big endorsement vote. I think it's made March the 10th, and that candidate is sort of, gets the party nod as this is the guy with the inside track to win the primary. So the mayor, I had gone to 2, I think, of these ward committee events beforehand. The mayor showed up at one, and he didn't show up at the second one. And that sort of raised an eyebrow. I was there with Jim O'Toole of the Post-Gazette. I believe we were the only media at this one that was over in the South Hills in Ward 19. And what the crowd was told by the ward chair, Pete Wagner, is that the mayor won't be here because of a scheduling conflict and something of a health issue. Mr. O'Toole and I were then told by the mayor's staff that the mayor's mother was ill,
Right.
Which, by the way, is
It's
the other
true.
consistent
Right.
motif in all of this.
Right.
Is it does seem that she is legitimately ill.
Right.
So, I think the thing is but the mayor had also missed a sort of, camera-friendly meet and greet event over the weekend, and then he blew off, apparently at almost the last minute, a scheduled appearance on Essential Pittsburgh.
Public radio, right.
The noon talk radio show from
Right.
WESA. And I think, because, again, a lot of this is chickens coming home to roost, because the mayor in the past had sort of not been where people who expected him to be, there was this thing of like, okay, now all of a sudden reporters wanted to be at a ward committee event, which you don't often find, and I say that as somebody who is often the only reporter in the room at these things. So at that point, I think it was just such a weird story. It happens fairly late in the evening. These events typically kick off at 6 or 7. What the ward chair in question, Kevin Quigley, who's a longtime associate of the mayor, he made this sort of strange cryptic thing about, personal issues that the mayor was facing. I think people just didn't quite know what to make of it at that point, to be honest with you.
Well, but I thought what he said was fascinating, and to me it was big. He said, essentially, when he said, pray for the family, and we guys stick together, we're Northsiders, and he's got some personal issues, and he'll be addressing those at a news conference. So he's the one who first said, something's up here.
Yeah.
And it sounded sort of dire because of the way Quigley said it, as if there was a death in the family.
Yeah.
Okay. So that to me is a huge story. Post-Gazette buries it. And then, bango, all hell does break loose.
Yeah.
And it was.
Yeah, it's very odd. I mean, remember,
do you
again,
think Quigley screwed up?
I don't. Did he screw up? I don't know. I mean, you gotta figure something was in the offing. To say that he screwed up, it's hard. I mean, again, everything that Quigley said would have been consistent with the mayor's mother being ill.
Right.
So is that necessarily all that this is about? I guess we'll learn a little bit more.
It didn't sound like that's all it was about.
Yeah, I don't think
not.
I don't think so either. And the other thing too is, again, we don't know what the mayor's about to say here in 45 minutes. There's naturally going to be speculation, even if he gets up and says, "My mother is very, very sick. I need to spend time with her, and I can't do that and campaign at the same time." I think there will certainly be speculation. Would this have happened? Would he be taking this approach if it weren't for these other things going on in his administration? And I'm sure that'll be the first question he gets asked.
And I'm sure his mother would be the first person.
His
mother would be as any mother would be the first person to say, "Son, do not mess up your professional life here. I'll be fine, and I'm right here."
Yeah, and the other thing, the other thing about that is, I don't know if folks remember, but back in 2009 when he was running for election, his mother actually wrote the Post-Gazette had each campaign for mayor have somebody kind of write an endorsement for them.
His mother
and
wrote
it was Ravenstah's mother who wrote his. But again, we're speculating a lot.
Yeah.
I have heard multiple things about her condition. It may well be very, very serious.
People are saying that she's been diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
How serious? Who knows? But here's the other thing. There have always been whispers about the mayor being seen around town at late hours in an inebriated state, blah, blah, blah. And none of that ever makes it out into the public.
Well, I can tell you this. I've been listening to KDKA.
I have too. I listened.
And it is now out there.
It's out. It's out. So why am I blanking on his name? Marty Griffin is today treating his listeners to all kinds of stories, including the mayor being over at the casino till 3, 4, 5 in the morning.
Yep.
With his 2 bodyguards in tow, and of course making that overtime.
Yep.
And then also we've heard from a former bodyguard that the mayor insisted that they doctor their hours.
Right.
Because if reporters like Chris could ask to see those records, which are public records,
Right.
you would see that, good heavens, the mayor's out at the casino till 3, 4 in the morning. Then he's over here at 3. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he misses an early meeting the next day, and then blah, 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 blah. And so, yeah. And apparently, he also said that after he'd met with the FBI, he, rather than like minding his P's and Q's, later that Friday, he was out and really, I guess, out of it at the Rochester Inn. I don't know what that place is.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so now everybody's talking.
Right. That's sort of the remarkable, I mean, one of the remarkable things about this is, you know, as you say, there have been sort of, you know, whispered rumors for many years. And you know, one of the things I've said many times is, you know, in this age of social media, you know, how would it be possible for all this stuff to be going on?
And we're not seeing tons of drunken Luke pictures.
Right, exactly. And you know, I mean, it's interesting that, you know, as the thing is, like, you know, in some ways, I think people are just kind of, there's a certain, you know, he's kind of on his way out, and people who sort of kept this inside because they didn't think it was going to make any difference, or just because they didn't want the hassle or whatever. You know, I think you're seeing a lot of that stuff, a lot of these kind of tales come out now that, you know, that reporters, you know, couldn't have necessarily pinned down before because people didn't have documentation and didn't want to go on the record.
But there's also a lot of pushback from people who just say, hey, leave the kid alone.
Right.
He's not a married man.
Right.
He's a young man.
I mean, generally speaking, I personally am in that camp myself, except to the extent, you know, that that tax dollars were supporting the cost of his bodyguards. So if he left those guys at home and gone and done whatever,
then then it's cool.
That would have been different.
Right,
but, you know, I think there's a question of, you know, and I think the question you're gonna hear now, if it's not being asked over on KDK even as we speak, is, well, why were those guards there with him? Why did he feel the need to have those folks with him?
Well, I brought that up on that WQED Friday night show last Friday night. I said, you know, Rich Fitzgerald wanders all over the place, and he doesn't have bodyguards. I said, what makes the mayor feel like what? He needs 2 bodyguards at all times when he's eating, drinking, going anywhere. And Bill Green said, well, in this time of after 9/11, and we all just started laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think Al-Qaeda is targeting Luke Ravenstah.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be a little careful about what I say here.
Well, I don't have to be.
Yeah, I mean, let me put it this way. Here's what the speculation is going to be: is are these guards really there to protect the mayor from other
or protect him from himself?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the question.
So
that
they're babysitters. So we're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for babysitters for the boy mayor.
Yeah.
Well, that's even more damning.
I mean, that's the concern. I mean, absolutely. So, you know, we'll just see. I mean, I just have to say, I'm very interested to see how this thing plays out. I mean, I think some of my reporter brethren, and I should add, by the way, that we'll have our Charlie Deitch will be on the scene for this. We'll be people who follow our Twitter account can follow it there, and we'll also sort of be doing live updates on our website, pghcitypaper.com. In 40 minutes or so, I think for a lot of reporters are expecting that the mayor is going to, whatever else he says, that he's going to try to call reporters out for somehow being reckless or irresponsible in some ways. I think we're all sort of expecting to see that happen. I think that would be a terrible misjudgment on his part. Just an embarrassment. I mean, he it didn't really go so well for him after Snowmageddon. I can't imagine it working out for him now.
Well, somebody just texted me sent me the picture of that WPXI TV showed of the mayor getting a lap dance.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what I mean. That's as far as I know, that's the only
thing that has
image.
surfaced.
And I don't know if it circulated on social media before PXI or after, but I saw it before I saw the PXI story. That, to my knowledge, is the only such document that exists.
Here's the thing. It's just the back of a guy.
Yeah.
That guy could be anybody.
And that's it. But the mayor, what was interesting is when you watch the PXI story, the mayor does acknowledge that it's him.
Oh, okay.
Which,
Because
I was a little I don't know. It's also apparently, part of what threw me off is the photo's apparently a year too old, which is also significant. And you can kind of tell that's an older photo because, as a balding man myself, I pay attention to this stuff.
Oh, he's not as bald as he is now?
Yeah, exactly. So that was my forensic research on that photo is, hey, wait a minute, that guy's bald spotted.
He's got too much hair. and then there's the guys wearing the Steeler jerseys, and you wonder, you can sort of get a hint, no, but that guy's still on the team at that point. Whatever. So, so there he is. He's getting a lap dance, and that nice. Okay, well, this is going to get interesting. I'm sure, are all the local stations carrying this live?
Yeah, I'm sure that they will be. And like I say, we'll just have for those who can't watch a television at work or something, but are able to listen to your show. We will also have stuff live on our website as well. You will have it streamed live? Yeah, well, if this works,
you're going to try.
We'll have sort of an automatic. It'll sort of self-update on our blog page. Okay, and also our Twitter account will also have it as well.
Well, I would imagine people in the Peduto and what's his name's Lamb. Bang. Poor Lamb. I cannot for the life of me ever remember his name. Poor guy. It's because I know Peduto. I don't know Lamb. Okay, they must be just so they can't believe it's like Christmas in March, huh? Well, this is the sort of interesting thing in some ways. If the mayor does, as we expect, if the mayor does decide not to run for re-election, what that means is there's only one candidate running for the Democratic Party endorsement, and that's Michael Lamb. What do you mean? Wait. You mean Peduto said, I don't even want it? Peduto chose not to run for the endorsement, which does make a certain amount of sense from his perspective. There's a lot of inside baseball that's not worth going into. Okay. But if the mayor decides not to run, then Lamb would be the endorsed candidate, assuming that the endorsement continues. The other side of that, too, is that, okay, so what happens to all those people, all those supporters, financially and otherwise, who were going to vote for Luke? If the only choice is between Lamb and Peduto, who are they going to support? There's some reason to think that at least a chunk of them might be more comfortable with Lamb, partly because Peduto's been such a sharp critic of the mayor for all this time, and partly because, Lamb, as a result of having run citywide campaigns, might be a little more visible, and he, some of the people who've contributed to Luke over the years have also contributed financially to Lamb's campaign. So, it's a little, it does change the dynamics of this race considerably, and in ways that I think people aren't necessarily, haven't necessarily thought all the way through. The other thing we should just note is that I can't just off the top of my head remember when the absolute drop-dead deadline for filing petitions is. Yeah, but you can see Jack Wagner jumping in here now. Yeah, although I suspect if Wagner were going to get in, it would still be more as an independent. I think it's a harder case for him to jump in for the primary when he didn't seek the endorsement. It's a little dicey. Right. But yeah, he absolutely could still get in. You might see some others at this point, which could sort of throw a monkey wrench in the mix. But I would still expect the main contenders here to be Lamb and Peduto, even if that happens. Well, the race, I mean, if in fact what we think is going to happen in the half hour or so, I think the race just got more interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's really sort of funny. I mean, I've just sort of been watching, online, and as people sort of absorb this news on Facebook and Twitter and everything else, and just the people who've been emailing or calling me, and there's this weird, almost kind of like, spring uprising quality about it. People just kind of feel, the people who've sort of been skeptics of the mayor for a long time just feel, almost liberated by the possibility that they don't have to, that they don't have to sort of worry about this three-way race triangulation, that they're sort of free of what, of this kind of burden of feeling you're running against an incumbent who you're just absolutely convinced is a disaster, but you just feel like, he's going to get reelected. He's going to get reelected almost no matter what you do. Well, I mean, the sense is that Luke was going to be mayor for life if he didn't screw up. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people felt that, unless something happened, like he was. Yeah, something huge, because he was our Luke. He's our boy. He's our, and things seem to be doing just fine. Yeah. Sort of, if you sort of squint.
Yeah,
But
right.
there, there's if you turn your head in some places. But wow, what do you think Chief Harper's thinking now?
I mean, I have no idea. I'd dearly love to know. I'll also just mention here that I've got my computer up, and a Post-Gazette reporter, Mariah Ballant, who covers City Hall, says that the mayor's parents have just walked into the mayor's office.
Oh boy.
So I don't know if that gives us an intimation of the kind of kind of event we're about to witness here.
Oh my gosh, it might be tearful.
Yeah, we shall see.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Here's what I feel like I can say. Even if the mayor decides to back out of the re-election, it may be that in terms of the public eye, at least in terms of the politics of it, he becomes less important. But federal investigators don't really care about that stuff.
No, I know they don't stop.
They're in the midst of an investigation, and so
That's right.
It's not even if the mayor does decide to withdraw from the race. This is going to keep up. And to answer your question about what Chief Harper is thinking, I have a feeling Chief Harper probably feels the same, the very same way.
I would imagine. I mean, if these charges of he telling his detail to fudge their, their time cards and the amount of that's the kind of stuff that'll get you indicted, won't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that would be a serious
this is
state of affairs. If time cards were indeed altered, it would be a problem.
Wow. Okay.
All right. I got to get going.
Fun stuff for you. Okay.
All right. Talk to you later, Lynn.
Thanks for joining us, Chris. Bye. Bye. Wow. I don't, I mean, for a reporter, this is fascinating stuff. Obviously, for the Ravenstah family, this is not. Fascinating is not a word one would apply. And, normal human empathy would allow, if his mom's sick and now his career's imploding, it's sad for that family. On the other hand, I'm part of the crowd that would feel very liberated by his leave-taking. Very liberated. And I would think that the city now, with an opportunity for new leadership, is going to continue its progress and maybe even at a faster clip with somebody at the helm who's actually paying attention. Let's get a break out of the way, and when we come back, feel free, jump on in here, 316-3381, or Lynn at pghcitypaper.com. In a minute.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Pittsburgh City Paper is available now. Pick up one today for our special summer camps preview section. Plus, Britt Floyd, Indigo Girls, Black Grace, and Tenacious D. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Packers.
Vikings.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we make a real difference in the building blocks of life. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly so do our communities. Real change won't happen without you.
Live United.
So give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okay, so I guess there is other news going on. The sequestration has begun. Can you feel it? Does it? It's so odd because, something cataclysmic never before has happened, and it's going to literally trickle down, to use a word that we've come to know. and generally scoff at. This will trickle down, and the trickle, I suspect, will become kind of a deluge at some point if they don't step in. I don't know. A lot of people potentially are going to be hurting as a result of the failure of Congress to be willing to negotiate. It just comes down to that. What else we got? I think the funniest thing going on, I just love these pictures. Have you seen the pictures of Dennis Rodman and Kim Jong Un? Is that surreal? It's so funny. I mean, I think of, North Korea as such a bizarro place. And that's when, it's easy to laugh when you think of it in that way. Of course, it's a hell on earth for the people who live there. It's a hell on earth. They're starving. There's an extraordinary number of them essentially in these concentration camps. They're born into them. They're slave labor. It's just it's a nightmare. One can't even conceive of it. And this closed-off society, and now with this younger head, Kim Jong Un, there's a slight crack opening up because otherwise you wouldn't see Dennis Rodman sitting next to the head of North Korea yucking it up with him. They had such a good time. They went back to the palace for a nice big meal while the folks outside starved to death. Very odd. Very odd. Turns out that Kim Jong Un loves basketball. So, I mean, he got treated to a Harlem Globetrotters thing. And, that is fun. Well, there was ping-pong that helped open up China. Do you remember that? Was that way before your time? It did. Ping-pong helped open up China. And maybe the Harlem Globetrotters with Dennis Rodman in tow can help open up North Korea. In that regard, it's probably a good development. I don't know. So, the CEO of Groupon got canned yesterday, and it's a young guy who I believe went to CMU. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think so. He's one of those young whiz kids. Andrew Mason. And he created out of whole cloth this concept, the Groupon concept. I got totally pulled into it for a while. I was getting Groupons left and right. And then other people started doing sort of the same thing. He has a headquarters in Chicago that employs a lot of people, including two of my nieces at one point. And so from them, I've heard about the culture of Groupon. And it's a loose, young, male culture. But I guess it's one thing to dream up a service like this, Groupon, a business that had never been thought through before. And it's another thing to know how to run it. Once it goes viral, literally goes, everybody just started jumping. It grew so big, so fast. And so this kid was good at figuring that out, how to create something. And I'm sure this happens a lot. The creator does not necessarily then know how to be a CEO. That's a whole different thing, because Groupon has been really struggling for years now. So the board finally threw him out. And it can't be easy for a board to throw the creator out, the founder out. It just happened locally in Pittsburgh with the Pittsburgh Irish and Classical Theater, a marvelous local theater company, incredible theater company, just threw out the guy who founded it. And that's always sort of an awesome thing. What I want to share with you, because I think it is so classy, and in this day and age, you don't see a lot of classy. So, CEO and founder Andrew Mason, he can't be even 30 years old. Maybe he's 30. Wrote his employees a memo yesterday, which amounted to being a goodbye. And I just want to read it to you. Shows him to be a good guy, an incredibly good guy. People of Groupon, after 4.5 intense and wonderful years as CEO of Groupon, I've decided that I'd like to spend more time with my family. Just kidding. I was fired today. If you're wondering why, you haven't been paying attention. From controversial metrics in our S1 to our material weakness to 2 quarters of missing our own expectations and a stock price that's hovering around 1/4 of our listing price, the events of the last 1.5 years speak for themselves. As CEO, I am accountable. You are doing amazing things at Groupon, and you deserve the outside world to give you a second chance. I'm getting in the way. A fresh CEO earns you that chance. The board is aligned behind the strategy we've shared over the last few months, and I've never seen you working together more effectively. It's time to give Groupon a relief valve from the public noise. For those of you who are concerned about me, please don't be. I love Groupon. I'm terribly proud of what we've created. I'm okay with having failed at this part of the journey. If Groupon was Battletoads, it would be like I made it all the way to the TerraTubes without dying on my first ever playthrough. Now, I don't know what that is, but I'm sure it's a video game. Awful cute. They're so young, these guys. I am so lucky to have had the opportunity to take the company this far. I'll now take some time to decompress. For your FYI, I'm looking for a good fat camp to lose my Groupon 40, if anyone has a suggestion. And then maybe I'll figure out how to channel this experience into something productive. If there's one piece of wisdom that this simple pilgrim would like to impart, have the courage to start with the customer. My biggest regrets are the moments that I let a lack of data override my intuition on what's best for our customers. This leadership change gives you some breathing room to break bad habits and deliver sustainable customer happiness. Don't waste the opportunity. I will miss you all terribly. Love, Andrew. How's that for a CEO letter? Isn't that nice? Isn't that wonderful? Wow. That's a good guy. That is a good guy. And I don't know many people who, being told to get out of their own creation, their baby, would do so with such class and with such honesty. I mean, and be able to accept, he accepts that he was the one screwing things up. And there's still an opportunity for them with different vision and somebody who knows how to do CEO stuff better, maybe, to keep it going. I just thought it was just very impressive. That was reprinted in The Atlantic, and The Atlantic says it's an amazingly self-effacing and candid goodbye. Say what you will about the man's business acumen, at least he is self-aware. It was very, very, very well done. If I were his mother, I'd be so proud of him. I really would. Fantastic. What a night for me to miss the QED Friday night show, 4802, because I won't be there tonight. Damn it. Of all nights, I'm the only one on the panel who kept saying, this is going to be bad. It's going to be bad. It could take Luke down. And they were all... So I don't get to say I told you so. I got to head to Philadelphia for an ACLU meeting, which will keep me very busy and occupied. So I will not be able to be there with you. I want just another heads up. Vanessa German, the wondrous performance artist and political activist who lives in Homewood and has established this wonderful art house for the African-American children in that neighborhood so that they can have a place to emote and share their artistic abilities and get together and blah, 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 is having an open house at the art house. I got to tell you, it's worth the trip. It's tomorrow, and again, I won't be able to be there. But if you can, art house, open house. Here's their poster. These kids are simply amazing. This is worth your time to see the kind of wondrous work in building communities that can come out of art. This is art at its best. So that's tomorrow from 10 to 3. And I'm sure Vanessa will be there if you want to meet this wondrous woman. It's at 7743 Hamilton Avenue, 7743 Hamilton Avenue in Homewood. Okay? Hamilton's a pretty main drag that runs parallel to, what do you call that, Fifth Avenue? No, that runs parallel to Penn Avenue. Terrible street.
Liberty. No.
No, Penn. It runs.
I don't.
It runs the same. It runs the same way as like Center and Penn. Yeah, in Homewood. Absolutely. Trust me here.
Okay, I trust you.
Frankstown, same kind of thing. Frankstown goes off in a weird way. Frankstown isn't part of the program. It goes flying off someplace else. But, yeah, one of them straight streets, that would take you straight through Wilkinsburg. Just do it a little bit further over in Homewood, 7743 Hamilton Avenue from 10 to 3. Treat yourself. I would be there if I weren't sitting at some conference table in Philadelphia. I also heard, and I haven't seen this, that Vanessa, who's been a guest on the show, Vanessa is, I think, was named one of the 40 emerging artists nationally. That's awesome. Did you see that, Jess?
That's awesome. I love that.
I know she was named the emerging artist here, but she... but I guess the Huffington Post had a piece of 40 women. I don't know, but she's amazing. She's just flat out amazing. She's one of these people that I just view as a force. She's a force. The kind of person, if you ain't gonna help, get out of her way. Yeah, because that is a force, and it's a force for good. Did I take a second break? I did, didn't I?
No, you didn't.
I didn't? I think I better.
Okay.
It looks like that time. Okay. And when I come back, a few thoughts about this and that, and that and this.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on museums, shows, and meals from your favorite local restaurants. This week only, get discounts up to 60% on shows at the Opera, Symphony, and City Theater. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. bergbargains.com.
This is the sound of a flat-screen television hurled off a building. Now the new bike your kid wants. These are the things you could have, all cast into oblivion. Because when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have bought with it. Use Energy Star light bulbs and appliances, and you could save hundreds of dollars a year. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okay, so the Pope flew off into the sunset, and now we start that. I can't help it. It is fascinating. That fascinating, conclave, where they sit and do their thing, and you wait for the white smoke and the black smoke and the this and the that, blah, 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 blah. And then you get to know the new Pope and... Anyway, sort of an interesting piece, I thought. And I think he's serious. This is a senior fellow at the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace and World Affairs at Georgetown. His name is Paul Elie. And he writes a piece in the New York Times that essentially says, hey, if the Pope can resign, then we can resign. And you don't have to resign forever, but you can take a breath and move away, like what he's doing. And it might benefit you, and it might benefit the church. So he says North American Catholics should consider resigning too. Because what the Pope has done is so significant and sort of viscerally captures the mood of many in the church, especially in North America, which is to say, I can't do this. This is what the Pope said. I can't do this. There's too much going on here, and most of it's bad. Everywhere I look, I'm not up to this. I got to get out. I just want to contemplate and, do my religion like I always wanted to do my religion. And the guy who's writing this says, resignation is what the Pope did, and resignation in all the facets of meaning is really what so many American Catholics feel about their faith. And that can be a real negative if you're resigned to what your church is. Excuse me, as opposed to being excited at what it could be. But resignation, which is sort of a burden, is what so many good Catholics feel. Paul Elie writes, we are resigned to the fact that so much in the Roman Catholic Church is broken and is not going to be fixed anytime soon. So if the Pope can resign, we can too. If only for a time. And he suggests maybe giving up Catholicism for Lent, which is sort of funny. Excuse me, I didn't mean to laugh. He says, in traditional parlance, Benedict's resignation leaves the chair of St. Peter vacant. So I propose that American Catholics leave the pews vacant this weekend. He really would like to see some mass thing by North American Catholics that just is a way to tug at the hems of the cardinals' cassocks and say, guys, if we had a helicopter, we'd fly away too. He says we should seize this opportunity to ask what is true in our faith, what it costs us in obfuscation and moral compromise, and what its telos or end purpose really is. and we should explore other religious traditions which we understand poorly. So, after recounting all the bad news, he says, ever since Benedict took office in 2005, it has been all bad news all the time. I mean, he had about as awful, remember, right out of the gate, he managed to really insult Muslims. I forget exactly how he pulled that off. Then he turned around and insulted Jews by embracing this despicable Holocaust denier. Then he had all the molesters and the cover-ups by their superiors, and then you had the bank, and it never stopped. It just became like... So you can understand. Benedict, I mean, he was always... John Ratzinger was a... Joseph, I always want to call him John. Joseph was he's a theologian by nature. He couldn't deal with any of this thing. He would not have stepped down if he did not think he was setting a sound precedent. A resignation prompted by physical, not institutional weakness. That he felt free to resign suggests that he thinks the church is doing fine. But a lot of us in the pews don't think so. So this guy goes on to say, that is why this Sunday I will not be in my pew at St. Boniface, even though I love it there. He's going to go to the Brooklyn meeting of the Quakers just to see what they're about. Or he said, I might go over to an Episcopal congregation, or maybe the Zen Mountain Monastery in the Catskills. Or maybe I'll go to a Shabbat service at a temple in Georgetown. Or maybe I'll go to a mosque. He says, I hope and expect to return to St. Boniface the following Sunday, but I can't be sure. To some degree, it's out of my hands. A temporary resignation by us, Catholics, would be a fitting Lenten observance. It would help believers to purify and deepen our faith in the light of our neighbors' faiths. It would let us begin to figure out what in Catholicism we can take and what we can and ought to leave. It might even get the attention of the cardinals who will meet behind the locked doors of the Sistine Chapel. And it might help dispel the resignation that we feel. Because as the Pope has shown, if so hidebound an institution as the papacy can be changed, then why can't the church? That was an interesting little piece. I am assuming that you have read or seen coverage of the Supreme Court hearing testimony about whether or not the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act had done its job and thus did not need to exist anymore. And if you did, you would be hard-pressed not to feel extraordinary discouragement. I think it was John Lewis, the congressman, who, as you know, was beaten bloody on a bridge in Selma trying to get the right to vote in the 60s. He said that when he heard, because he was listening to the arguments, that when he heard Antonin Scalia call the Voting Rights Act, quote, a perpetuation of racial entitlement. He said he started crying. He began to weep. To have come so far and to know that there's so much farther to go, and then to hit this kind of backward thinking. How is allowing black people to vote an entitlement? It's a civil right that Americans get at birth. And it was a civil right denied African Americans even after emancipation. It required a Voting Rights Act in my lifetime, in the 60s. And then it required that the federal government rode herd on a number of states and jurisdictions to make sure that they were doing it, that they weren't screwing around with their usual tricks. Taxes and literacy tests and this and that and intimidation. And as we know, it's still happening. It's just in a different form. So now in Florida, they decide they won't open the polls on Sunday, which they always had done in their early voting, because Sunday is when all the black people voted. They'd go to church, and then they'd go to vote. That was the tradition. So they closed the polls. Here in Pennsylvania, we're fully aware of the attempt here to keep black people from voting with the voter ID law. It's incredible. It still continues. And that Antonin Scalia would call the Voting Rights Act a perpetuation of racial entitlement. It is no wonder that courageous Congressman Lewis was moved to tears. A letter to the New York Times today from Jesse Albert in Los Angeles says it pretty well. What began in 1965 with Lyndon B. Johnson's famous words, "I speak tonight for the dignity of man and the destiny of democracy." Well, that would appear to be on the verge of ending, with Justice Scalia's soon-to-be infamous words, calling that same Voting Rights Act a perpetuation of racial entitlement. Never before has our country so glaringly appeared on a backward track. And it's pretty clear that the votes are there. And that what these folks in our country, of which there are way, way, way too many, who don't get it, who don't understand, who I guess now think because we elected a black president, there's no prejudice in this country. And there's no effort to deny African Americans the full rights of citizenship. I forgot where that sentence began, so I don't know how it ended. Well, guys, show's pretty much over. I'll be back on Monday. Look forward to seeing you. Stay tuned if you've got a means to do so for the Luke Ravenstah news conference, which is going to be something. I guess, something. All the speculation will end, and we will find out what's really going on. So I'm sure all the local TV stations are streaming it live, so you should be able to get it on your computers, your smartphones, and your televisions. So enjoy. We'll talk about it on Monday.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.